Hi, Alaap. Thanks for joining us today. For some of the viewers who might or might not know you, maybe you can start with like a short self-introduction of yourself, as well as maybe your professional journey up to this point.
Okay, thanks for having me here. So I am a startup founder. I run a couple of very, very diverse startups. So I have a coffee business, which is called Monk's Brew Club. And we have a cafe on the East Coast in Singapore, which also doubles up as an events and a co-working space, split across two levels. And then I also have an ad tech startup. It's called Ads in Store, and we essentially are building programmatic technology for retail stores. So we put screens inside retail stores and we show ads in real time. So that's what I do now. I've been doing this for about a year and a half. Before this, I spent 9 years at Google, where I did multiple roles, ranging from strategy to ad sales to actually spending time at an incubator. And before that, I've spent time at Accenture doing a bit of consulting, and then in the media agency business, split across India and Singapore. So that's been my journey so far.
So I think Google is like a pretty big company. So you were at Google before founding two ventures, Monk's Brew Club and Ads in Store.
Yeah.
Can you perhaps share with us more about your experience in Google, as well as how you actually transitioned to the two ventures that you are on right now?
Okay, interesting question. Yeah, so experience at Google was great, right? I joined Google in 2014. It was still a smallish company then, not too large. I joined the Singapore office, which is actually not too far from here, just probably a couple of blocks down the road. And I think we were at that point maybe 300, 350 people in Singapore. So everybody knew everybody. And then from there, over 9 years, when I left Google, it had grown to almost 3,000 people. So obviously, the company had grown, and with that, a lot of the work that we did had changed significantly as well. Having said that, it was even though it was such a large company, the work was still very entrepreneurial. You kind of felt like you were running your business and you had the independence and freedom to do a lot of things that you wanted, right? Even when I was a part of the large sort of ads engine at Google, which still contributes to significant part of Google's revenue today, we were still doing a lot of fun things because in Southeast Asia, Google was still growing, right? So we had an opportunity to bring a lot of new clients on board, grow them from a very small base to becoming very large spenders with Google across APAC. And then towards the end, when I was in the incubator, I was already in startup mode. Uh, Although we were fairly well funded by Google, so we didn't have to worry about funding, but we were still, trying to figure out whether ideas could work, whether there would be user adoption, whether we could monetize them. So some of that mindset had already set in. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think the big transition when I moved to doing my own thing was that I was my own boss, so there was a little more freedom to do things my way. But then, having said that, the pressure was that I wasn't as well funded, so I had to go and look for money, right? But it's been an interesting transition. I've got a lot of support from friends and family, and people like Chris at Key, and Zooglers, and people all around. So it's been an interesting transition. It's been hard at times, but fun at the same time.
It seems like you had like a really good experience at both Google and even in your two ventures now. How do you think that, throughout your transition, how do you think that your experience in Google have transformed your professional career? And maybe could you share some takeaways about what you continue to use today in your ventures that you actually maybe gain while you were working in Google?
Yeah, so I mean, I've in many ways, like I was just saying, right? So the entrepreneurial mindset has come through, right? I think what I bring out of Google into my professional journey is a lot more structure, right? So even in my ads startup, when I now talk to my sales teams, I kind of use some of the same models and same sort of constructs that we were using at Google because I think they work very well. As we start building product, there's a lot of learnings that I bring from Google in terms of, product development, how to work with eng teams, how to go out and figure out what the user actually wants or what the customer actually wants. So I think there's a lot of best practices that we learned there that I can bring back into my ads business. My coffee business is a little more sort of, it is little different. So there aren't that many, applicable sort of transferable learnings. But having said that, even there, right, the basic sales rigor of trying to figure out how much you're making versus how much you're spending, trying to make sure that we again put structures and processes there. So I think a lot of that has come from my, 9 or 10 years that I spent at Google.
Interesting. It seems like actually like being at Google gave you a lot of experience and of course good takeaways that you continue to use in your ventures afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so uh sort of like transitioning into the topics of layoffs that are happening right now, and also based on the current situation of the meta layoffs as well as layoffs that are happening globally. Uh, what advice or takeaways do you have for folks who are maybe going through this process?
So, I mean, first advice is, first off, I think I feel for them, right? Because a lot of people who have been impacted probably either didn't see it coming or didn't expect it to happen. It's hard to, mentally justify why it's you and why not the next person and why not the person sitting next to you. Having said that, I encourage everyone to look at this as an opportunity, either to start something new or transition into something that they've probably been putting off for a while. But I guess it depends on what stage of the career of your career or your professional journey you are at. Or someone who's probably both for maybe only 5 or 10 years, in their mid to late 20s, I think this might be a little harder. But at the same time, I think, you know, Gen Z is a lot more sort of adventurous to try new things, right? Someone who's probably worked for 15, 20 years, it might come with a slightly different challenge because, again, you might have family responsibilities, you might have other sort of monetary commitments that you have. My suggestion always is to keep a sort of a positive mindset. Look for opportunities that are out there, talk to a lot of people. The biggest suggestion I have is like, don't, bottle yourself up and cut yourself out from the rest of the world. This has been ongoing for the last couple of years. So there are people who've actually, gone through this and probably come out better on the other side now over the last year and a half. So talk to people, figure out what their experiences have been like. And maybe there's something that you can pick up from there and get a little bit of encouragement, some hope, something to look forward to.
Thank you for sharing. Based on your experience, how did you actually process the change immediately after you left Google? Like, how did the first week of leaving Google look like, and how did the subsequent weeks and months transform for you?
So, see, one thing is, it was a bit of a, shock and a surprise, but at the same time, I had been working for about, 18 odd, 20 odd years. So I was ready to do something different. So I looked at this as an opportunity, probably something that I wouldn't have done otherwise. First week was interesting. First week, Chris took me to a wild coffee plantation discovery journey to India. So that was interesting. But then that also kind of got me started into the thing that I'd been trying to putting off for a while, right? So I've been studying and experimenting, and learning about coffee for a better part of the last 20 years. So for me, it was like, okay, this is finally time to get into it and try to do something. So it wasn't so much of a shock, but I mean, again, obviously it takes a little bit of an adjustment, right? So when you worked in a company for a long time, to get out and start doing stuff by yourself and for yourself, it does take a little bit of a mental adjustment. Yeah, I mean, that took a bit of, time. But honestly, I also thought that this is probably the best time in my professional journey to take the leap and see whether I can build something for myself, right? Because I was probably at that right sort of mix of professional experience and at that stage in my career where I could take that journey, take that leap, right? So I saw that as an opportunity.
I think actually a lot of people who are going through the layoffs, they might have a similar thought process as you that, like I want to start my own venture now. I want to start my own startup. So how did you sort of recognize that you were at a point in life where you are able to start a venture of yourself? And how would you sort of advise people who are still going through the dilemma and the conundrum of whether they should start something of their own?
So to be honest, in hindsight, I think I should have done this earlier. I shouldn't have waited so long to do it. I think the dilemma is always going to be there. The only way to figure out whether you can do something by yourself or not is to just do it, right? Because unless you take the plunge, you wouldn't know otherwise. Right? You would always keep contemplating, or you would always keep putting it off, and you will always have that self-doubt about whether or not you can set up your own business, right? Or you have your own startup. So I'm not sure if there's a right answer to this. My suggestion is just try it, stick with it for a bit, see how comfortable or uncomfortable you are with the process, right? And yeah, it's always that very I mean, it's always a very conventional journey, right, where you're sort of very excited about doing something. You don't know whether it's going to work out. You always overestimated how much money you can make. You always underestimated how much time it's going to take. So after a while, you go through that sort of valley of uncertainty, saying in 4 to 6 months whether I made the right decision or the wrong decision. But I think if you pass through that and you're able to kind of rationalize and reconcile it a little bit, and you get to the other side, you realize that maybe it wasn't such a bad decision, right? I'm not sure if this is what a lot of people will agree with, but in my opinion, you should just jump into it and try it.
I think it is still valuable for people who are, just sitting on it and thinking about whether they should or not. I think having your experience with them would maybe help them to, or push them to make a decision and finally start a new venture.
Yeah, and I'm happy to chat with anybody who is willing to listen to me and share my journey in a sort of more sort of detailed way and the steps that I actually went through.
So, on a more personal note, regarding the layoffs, uh, for those actually with a family or a partner or maybe someone they have to provide for, how would you actually suggest that they approach the conversations and the process following the layoffs?
Interesting question, right? So again, I think it's fairly personal and it's hard to sort of generalize the answer for everyone. But my suggestion is to be open and honest with the family. Share what you're feeling, share what you're going through. Multiple stages of grief. You'll have to process it in a different way. From the people I've seen around me, there's been a lot of support both from the family and outside, right? Others who've gone through something similar. In terms of family responsibilities, I guess it depends on which part of the world you are in. Uh, if you are an expat in a different country, then obviously there's a good chance that your resident status in the country is dependent on your visa, which is probably provided by your employer. So then there are multiple levels of liability. If you have kids, then there's school fees. You're living outside, rentals. I mean, again, depending on where you are, right? So I guess my suggestion for people in general, not you, just those impacted by layoffs, is if you are an expat, explore your options. Try and figure out what you could do if things do come to a pass and you are one of those impacted. So think about this, do a little bit of future planning, do a little bit of scenario planning and say, hey, here's my scenario 1, where nothing happens. Scenario 2 is, something changes. Scenario 3 is, I need to maybe move countries. I think it just makes sense for everyone to plan a little ahead now.
You mentioned a bit about like expats who might have to explore other job options. Do you maybe have any advice for folks who are job hunting right now and who may have a 90 days time period to find a job due to their visa restriction?
My suggestion is network, not just in the 90-day period. My suggestion to everyone is network, right? Because I think one of the things I realized from my time, especially in large companies like Google, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, is if you've been there for a long time, you tend to become a little bit inward looking, right? Because there's certain amount of comfort level, there's certain amount of um, there's a you lead a slightly privileged life, and do not tend to look too much to what's happening outside around you. So my suggestion in general is, one, keep an eye out on the latest trends and what's going on. Network both internally and externally, right? Because then what happens is, if you do get to that situation where you have a 90-day wait period to look for something, you at least know or have some options in mind or some thoughts in mind on what you could potentially do or where you could potentially go, right? And then, of course, I mean, there are industry forums. There's the tech industry in particular is getting more networked. Obviously, LinkedIn is a way to keep track of what's going on. Platforms like Key have been super useful. From the last time I heard, the Key community was about 60,000 strong globally, which is huge by any stretch of imagination. You break it down into small communities across different cities. I think in Singapore there's about 1,000 people. Similarly, you go to the US, each city has its own sort of key chapter or key communities. So there are opportunities there. People are very, very willing to support. There's many job postings that come through, on the WhatsApp groups and networks and forums. So keep an eye out. Try and see if there's an opportunity for something for you to do. People are very happy to provide reference. So if you see something in a company and you ask within the community, you might find somebody who would be willing to refer you. So I think that's probably the way to start. And I think one other thing to do is think about what a good resume looks like, right? Especially if you're applying somewhere outside, right? Drill it down to like 2 pages. It doesn't matter whether you worked for a year or 2 years or 5 years or 20 years. I think a good resume shouldn't be more than 2 pages long. If you work for 5 years, try and fit it into a page, because you don't really have that much to talk about. Right. So try and work on that. Work on how you would want to present yourself. If somebody asks you the question and somebody said, "Hey, tell me about yourself," what's your actual answer going to be? If I ask you 3 things that are important to you, what's your actual answer going to be? So rehearse a bit and do a little bit of, role playing, scenario planning, do a bunch of that. And then the 90-day period becomes a lot more comfortable, right? Because if you wait till the day, God forbid you get impacted, and then you start working on all of this, first you're processing the grief itself and the fact that you got impacted, and then you have to pull yourself up and start doing all of these things. You already losing 30 to 60 days and trying to get all of this together. Then it gives you very little time to, move on and do something else.
I think, yeah, I think those are like really great advice that you share for those who are like maybe in the current situation right now. And you also mentioned Key. Thank you for using Key at Monk's Brew Club. And I think we would love it if you can share a bit more about the community and the events you're running at Monk's Brew. And who are the people you are trying to value add to for your community and the events?
Yeah, so we run multiple events in Monks Brew Club, right? So from very basic sort of social events, from very everyday fun things like pub quizzes and dinner with strangers and date nights, to slightly more serious stuff, which starts from in the form of, let's say, industry networking, to them moving on to fireside chats, startup demo days, many to one, one is to many type of events. we're trying to bring people from different communities together. So not just corporate, not just startup, not just VCs, but we are trying to become sort of the hub of ideas in Singapore. Right, and Key has been super helpful there because we've been one of the early users of Key and trying to leverage the platform. Both or online and offline Keys been super helpful in bringing people together, spreading the word, getting people to network and bringing them to MBC, right? I mean, I see Monks Brew Club as sort of the physical manifestation of what Key is trying to do online,
Yeah.
right? And that's how I think it's also super complementary, and that's why we continue to use Key as a primary sort of networking tool.